The most powerful woman in the world was rotting alive. Forget the pristine portraits. Forget the gowns of velvet and gold. In the winter of 1562, Queen Elizabeth I lay on her deathbed, her body a canvas of grotesque smallpox sores, festering in her own filth. The air is thick with the cloying scent of burning herbs and vinegar, a desperate attempt to purify the rot that seems to seep from the very walls. Courtiers whisper in shadowed corners, their faces pale with fear. They speak of God's wrath, of a kingdom without an heir. But what they don't speak of, what no one dares to mention, is the silent enemy that invited this plague into the heart of the court filth. We imagine the Tudor era as a time of gilded splendor, of magnificent gowns and opulent feasts. But beneath the velvet and jewels lay a reality so squalid, so utterly repulsive, it would make a modern stomach churn. This isn't just a story of a queen's illness. It's a story of a world where beauty was a mask and the most horrifying secrets were hidden in plain sight. Tonight, we peel back that mask. We expose the 4 most disgusting hygiene practices of Queen Elizabeth I and reveal the shocking truth of what it truly meant to live and smell like a 16th century monarch. The royal bath, an annual affair. Cleanliness is next to godliness, a phrase we take for granted. But for Elizabeth and her subjects, it was a foreign concept. In an age riddled with plague and pestilence, water was seen not as a source of life, but as a harbinger of death. Physicians of the time, men of great learning and greater ignorance, preached a dangerous gospel. They believed that water, especially hot water, opened the pores of the skin, creating a gateway for miasma, the bad air thought to carry disease. To bathe was to invite the devil into your very bloodstream. So, how often did the most powerful woman in the world actually wash her entire body? The Spanish ambassador, a man accustomed to the more refined bathing habits of the continent, once noted with barely concealed disgust that Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, bathes once a month, whether she needs it or not. Think about that. Once a month. In a world without deodorant, without effective sanitation, surrounded by hundreds of equally unwashed bodies, crammed into palaces with poor ventilation. The royal bath was not a daily ritual, but a rare, almost ceremonial event. It involved a wooden tub, hauled into her private chambers, and filled with buckets of heated water, often scented with herbs like chamomile or marjoram. But these fragrant additions were less about cleanliness and more about masking the odors they failed to wash away. Her father, the formidable King Henry VIII, was known to have a more frequent bathing schedule, thanks to his obsession with his health. But his daughter, a monarch who prided herself on her pragmatism, saw little need for such indulgence. The result, a constant, low-level grime that clung to the skin of everyone from the stable boy to the queen herself. It was a film of sweat, dust, and dead skin, a breeding ground for lice, fleas, and bacteria. They believed they were protecting themselves from disease, but in reality they were marinating in it. The stench of the court was legendary. But if the body was a temple left to decay, the face was a tomb, sealed with a far more toxic substance. The mask of youth, a poisonous veneer. To be a woman in power in a man's world was to be constantly under scrutiny. To be a queen was to be a living icon. Elizabeth's image was her power, her pale, almost luminous skin, her fiery red hair. This was the brand of the Virgin Queen, a symbol of purity and divine right. But this iconic image was a carefully constructed illusion, and its primary ingredient was poison. The ideal of beauty in the Elizabethan era was a ghostly pallor. A white face signified wealth and nobility. It meant you did not toil in the sun like a common laborer. To achieve this look, Elizabeth turned to a cosmetic known as Venetian ceruse. It was a thick, white paste, a foundation slathered over the face, neck, and décolletage. It was incredibly effective, hiding the scars left by her near, fatal bout of smallpox and creating a smooth, porcelain finish. It was also incredibly deadly. The primary ingredient in Venetian ceruse was white lead, a potent neurotoxin. Every morning, the queen would sit before her silver mirror as her ladies, in waiting, applied the paste. With each application, the lead was slowly, insidiously absorbed into her bloodstream. The long-term effects were horrific skin discoloration, hair loss, digestive problems, and eventually organ failure. The irony was as cruel as the poison itself. The very substance she used to hide her smallpox scars was destroying her skin underneath, creating a vicious cycle. The more damaged her skin became, the more ceruse she needed to cover it. Contemporary accounts describe her face in her later years as wrinkled and decayed beneath the mask. But the poison didn't stop there. To complete the look, bright red lips and rosy cheeks were essential. The rouge of choice, a substance made from cochineal beetles, was sometimes used, but a more potent and more dangerous pigment was vermilion. Its key ingredient, mercury sulfide, another deadly poison. She was quite literally painting her face with death, day after day, a slow, methodical self-poisoning in the name of power and beauty. But the toxins on her face were nothing compared to the decay happening inside her mouth. The royal smile, a blackened ruin. Sugar. Today it's a common staple. In Elizabethan England, it was the ultimate luxury item, a status symbol more valuable than many spices. And Queen Elizabeth had a notoriously sweet tooth. She consumed vast quantities of it, in the form of crystallized fruits, syrupy preserves, and intricate sugar sculptures called subtleties. Her teeth, however, paid the price. A German visitor to her court, Paul Hentzner, wrote in 1598, "Her teeth are very yellow and unequal. It is a defect the English seem to be subject to from their great use of sugar." He was being diplomatic. Other accounts describe her teeth not just as yellow, but as blackened stumps rotted to the gums. The constant pain she suffered from dental abscesses was a matter of court record. What about dental hygiene? It was virtually non-existent. Toothbrushes, as we know them, would not be common for centuries. The best one could hope for was a toothpick, often a carved piece of wood or bone, or rubbing the teeth with a cloth. Tooth powders existed, but their abrasive ingredients, like brick dust or crushed oyster shells, often did more harm than good, stripping away enamel. The Queen's solution to the agonizing pain was not treatment, but extraction. But even this was a terrifying ordeal. Fearing the procedure, she once refused to have a rotten tooth pulled until one of her own bishops, a man named John Almer, bravely had one of his own healthy teeth pulled in front of her to demonstrate that the pain was bearable. Her blackened smile became so infamous that it paradoxically became a fashion trend among the elite. Some court ladies would deliberately blacken their own teeth to emulate the Queen and to signal that they, too, were wealthy enough to afford sugar. A court that smelled of unwashed bodies. A queen painting her face with lead and mercury. A smile defined by decay. This was the reality. And it all culminated in the most disgusting practice of all, the daily disposal of human waste. The palace privy, a royal mess. We imagine palaces as pristine, majestic places. The reality of Hampton Court or Whitehall was an assault on the senses, with hundreds, sometimes thousands, of courtiers living and working in close quarters. The logistical challenge of waste disposal was immense, and their solution was appallingly simple. They used a privy. For most, this was simply a wooden bench with a hole in it, placed over a cesspit in the basement or a moat outside. For the Queen, it was a slightly more luxurious affair known as the close stool, a velvet, cushioned chair with a pewter chamber pot concealed inside. A dedicated servant, the groom of the stool, had the dubious honor of attending to the Queen's needs and disposing of the contents. Where did the contents go? Straight into the nearest ditch, cesspit, or directly into the River Thames, the same river that provided the city with its drinking water. The palace corridors were not just drafty, they were often used as impromptu toilets. In the absence of public restrooms, courtiers would simply relieve themselves in a quiet corner, behind a tapestry, or even in a fireplace when it wasn't lit. The sheer filth was staggering. Attempts were made to mask the odor by burning incense and strewing sweet, smelling herbs like meadowsweet on the floor. But this only mingled the perfume with the stench of urine and feces. Erasmus, a scholar who visited England shortly before Elizabeth's reign, commented on the English habit of leaving old rushes on the floor for years, creating a layered concoction of spit, vomit, the urine of dogs and men, beer, scraps of fish, and other filth not to be named. This was the world Queen Elizabeth I inhabited, a world of magnificent ceremony built atop a foundation of human waste, a world where perfume fought a losing battle against putrefaction, where a beautiful, pale face concealed a landscape of poison and decay. Elizabeth I reigned for 44 years. She defeated the Spanish Armada, sponsored explorers who circled the globe, and presided over a golden age of art and literature. She was Gloriana, a queen who projected an image of divine, untouchable power. But we now see the truth behind the portrait. Her power was maintained at a terrible personal cost. Her body was a battleground ravaged by disease, poisoned by cosmetics, and rotted by sugar. Her palaces, for all their splendor, were little more than gilded cesspits. We look back with a sense of revulsion, but also with a new understanding. This wasn't a personal failing. It was the reality of her time. An age of profound ignorance, where the most basic principles of hygiene were a mystery, and life was a daily negotiation with filth and disease. Her story is a stark reminder that the past is a foreign country, a place where even a queen's crown could not protect her from the squalor of her own world. It forces us to ask, what accepted practices of our own time will be viewed with similar disgust by future generations?